Are we live? Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, How Manufacturers Can Maximize Their Existing Resources and Bridge the Skills Gap. I'm Abby. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Amper, and I'm going to be here for any technical support you need. If you have any questions or you need any help with the actual Zoom, just chat me. But Akshat is going to be leading this presentation, and I will hand it over to him.
Thanks, Abby. Yeah, this is Akshat here. Thanks for taking the time out. We can wait maybe a minute or so while folks join the meeting. I think a couple of people just joined, so we'll just wait a few.
Sounds good. We do have a lot of content to cover though, so it'll be about 30 minutes, might run over, but we are recording this, so if you have to jump off at any point, you will get a recording and a copy of the slides. Should we get started?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
All right. So thanks everyone for taking the time out today. This is Akshat here from Amper. I'm going to be talking about how manufacturers can maximize their existing resources and bridge the skills gap. The goal of this presentation is to make it as practical as possible so you can walk away with a couple of things that you can apply before the end of the year. So let's get into it. Just a quick introduction on my background. So I'm co-founder and CEO at Amper. Grew up around manufacturing my whole life. Really passionate about the industry and love understanding how things are made and being in the shop floor environment. On the flip side, I've also seen the challenges in running a manufacturing operation. And my dad runs automotive manufacturing. My family's been doing it for generations. So really close to home for me. And so kind of an overview of what are the challenges that we're really trying to solve over here. So most manufacturers have hiring skilled and labor and retaining skilled talent as their top issue. This is in part because of a retiring population, but also just scarce resources to set up complex jobs and so on. The second is, obviously, we're living in the midst of a pandemic, and there's been a dislocation in demand, and several industries are hurting. And 72% of manufacturers have had a negative impact to their sales. This has heightened the need to be more productive, have more cost savings, and essentially do more with less. And finally, just given the time of the year and with everything going on, there is a lot of uncertainty in the world, and managing resources, investing further in businesses is not easy to do. So these are some of the challenges that we've seen. As a consequence of this, the average utilization of machines in the typical factory is about 26%. This is data that we've gathered from Amper at the start of our customer's journey on what the average utilization is. And this consequentially results in about $1.5 million in lost capacity every year per manufacturer. This stems from some low-hanging fruits around excessive downtime and so on. And so this in itself is a case to double down on your operations and drive focus through data. And but this is heightened by the fact that over 50% of manufacturing jobs remain unfilled, and there are 4.6 million jobs that are needed to be filled over the next 10 years across the industry. And so that's what brings us to Amper and what we're going to be talking about today. So the first topic is around workforce development and making the most of your existing team. A place that we like to get started is around skills assessment. This means creating a baseline around where you are today so you can be objective about what are the strengths and weaknesses within your team. So the first step in this is to kind of identify the skills that are core to your business and that drive your customers' happiness. And so for a machine shop, for example, it could be learning how to program complex machines. It can be around how do you set up different types of jobs and so on. And against this, having a list of your employees so that you can understand and get a sense of where things are at. Obviously, you need a grading system established where you can measure competence and skills, and you can establish your own grading system to measure this. And the end product from an exercise like this looks something on these lines, where you have a matrix of your skills, where you can both understand where you're really competent in. So maybe certain skill sets are really great at your company and might be something to even further double down on with winning certain jobs or documenting such knowledge. And on the flip side, there might be areas and skill gaps where you might either want to hire for or pay close attention to at new candidates, or invest in training for your existing workforce, or both. And ultimately, you'll get a sense of where each employee is at in this matrix, giving you a sense of what your workforce is composed of. Once you have this established, you can have a kind of this kind of matrix and scoring system. You might want to do this at maybe at least an annual basis, if not more frequently, like biannual or quarterly. Now, an interesting study that we came across in Harvard Business Review is that the average manager spends just 30 minutes every 3 weeks with the direct reports. And that is obviously very little time spent in developing talent. And the study also said that such employees that don't have structured one-on-ones and coaching are 4 times more likely to be disengaged than someone who does have that level of management. And so a great step that we recommend is starting a culture of coaching through one-on-ones. Obviously, it takes time away from your other responsibilities, but even starting with something like a monthly one-on-one system is better than not having one. And related to this, a Deloitte study found that over 50% of Americans don't think manufacturing is rewarding, interesting, or safe. That is really unfortunate because I'm sure all of us grew up seeing how it's made, and manufacturing is just a fascinating industry. But it does require communicating the path for growth, both financially as well as on a skill level. And so what we've seen a lot of our customers do is give folks different levels that they can grow at based on that original skill matrix that we had covered. This is a great way to keep people engaged, and also for you to have a structured approach to upskilling your team. Again, something different from coaching is having regular training, which means essentially having standards and best practices disseminated across your team through content. Some of our customers have things like programming machines or around setup times, 5S, all these other training sessions scheduled on a regular basis. And we've also seen some really interesting certifications, for example, being certified to run a certain type of machine or do training for new employees. These are great ways to incentivize folks to really be engaged and upskill the skill set. all of us want resources on the job, and it can be frustrating when you don't get things when you need them. And we we found that having real-time availability of resources for folks on the shop floor can not only engage people and make them feel like they're being empowered, but also can help you cut down your downtime and ultimately get parts out of the door faster. So the first step in this is setting up expectations and procedures in your company around how employees can get help. For example, if an operator needs help from maintenance, setting up a process in place where there's this expected response time, a procedure for communicating enough context so that a technician can show up prepared and aware of what to do. The next is having some sort of established communication process and tools on your shop floor. Instead of someone just having to walk around, find someone in the building who might be stuck in a meeting or outside, especially at a time like COVID, having some kind of communication system in place can be really valuable. And finally, for issues that are recurring that could be solved through better work instructions or checklists, having those established that information is readily available. I want to give a quick example about what it might look like with a real-time and-on communication tool. So this is Amper's operator dashboard. And I'm going to just show an example. So let's say I'm an operator who wants to get some help from maintenance. Instead of having to walk around this facility, I can simply say, I want to call my team. I want to set up a new call to maintenance. I can type in a little message like, I need some help fixing this jig, and I can submit it. And what's really neat is that it's already been established what my target response time is for getting this help. So what's neat is that it gets measured as well. So you can retrospectively see, what are these response time targets being met or not. While, obviously this is a digital system dedicated for and-on, there might be other ways, even without a system like this, that you can set up as expectations of communication. So moving on to the next topic. And related to this, just a quick case study on a customer. One of our customers set up certain departments for response as support teams. So maintenance, engineering, quality, and as I mentioned, setting up expected response time for each department. All right, so we've gone over a skills assessment about creating a baseline around where things are at today. We went over creating a one-on-one system so you can give continuous feedback and also have a path towards upskilling as well as getting paid more. And having covered how you can provide real-time resources, it's a good segue to how you can reduce your setup times and changeover. Most precision manufacturers that we work with have high mix, low volume manufacturing, meaning there's a ton of setup times, and that is often a black box around how do you really cut down those setups and changeovers. And so as we all know, what gets measured improves. And so here's a best practice for cutting down setup times, which is number one, set up standard steps. Now, this can be standard for the same type of machine or generally the same process of setup, but you want to create these buckets that everyone more or less follows. The reason for this is then you can begin to time how long each step takes in this process and understand where the bottlenecks are. Third is around this setup steps, you want to have additional context, like was it the machine, was it the part number, was the employee? So you can look at it beyond just a dimension of setup times, but have more context that maybe this part number's setup time is really much longer than what we quote, and it seems to be recurring. On the flip side, maybe a certain operator is really, really good at it that we should be learning from, and so on. The fourth is analyzing your bottlenecks and setting up a plan to improve and repeat. We've seen some low-hanging fruits by even one cycle of this, where a very basic thing like a process that had been established 10 years ago that didn't quite make a lot of sense was identified and improved on. So here's some typical setup steps, like tear down, preparation, and so on. And I want to show you an example about what it might look like if you were to measure your setup steps. Now you can do this with a timer, with a stopwatch. You can do one-off studies. And at Amper, since we work with folks that really want to cut down the setup times, we built a dedicated tool where you can actually have time checklists. So this is what it looks like. So you can set up your own setup steps, like the one we went through earlier. Start setup. And it actually, not only does it serve as a checklist in order for folks to follow the SOPs, but it's also a time checklist that can ultimately give you measurements and distribution around where your bottlenecks really are. So as you can see, I just went through the next step, preparation, and it's timing how long that step is taking. And I can even pause it if I'm being called for some other support resource. All right, so moving on. So at Amper, we love to learn more about lean principles and really share those with the customers. And something that we've seen come up over and over again is around having a SMED event. And kind of want to talk about this concept. So it's a lean principle where you want to identify what are the elements that really make up a changeover or setup, and to identify what are the internal elements, meaning those steps must be completed while the machine is stopped, and also separate the external events that can be done while the machine is running. And identifying these helps you better optimize your setup process. So the way you do this is by extracting what are the external activities and getting them out of the setup process itself. And this alone can cut down your setup times by 50%. In fact, in a couple of days, we're going to be having another session that's dedicated to just cutting down setup time. So very excited to share more on that. And so here are just some examples like retrieval of parts, inspection, cleaning, quality. These are all activities that are external that can be taken out of the setup process so that you can cut that setup time down. Okay, so moving on to operational excellence. So we went over skill development and really how you can look at the more human aspect of improving your operations. And now we want to talk a little bit about your machines and taking a more holistic view. So the lowest hanging fruit is around ensuring your daily targets are met. And three approaches to this are, number one, to visualize your targets. So that everyone knows exactly where you're at, and also, again, I can measure against your goal. The second is having timely escalation of issues. Something that we've seen with some of our customers is setting up levels of downtime that are tolerable. So, for example, a supervisor might get a text message when there's over 60 minutes of downtime, and maybe the plant manager would get it if there's over 2 hours of downtime, and so on. And the third is setting up daily production reports so you can see across your machines, part numbers, and employees what had happened that day. So the feedback loop is fairly short. It also follows the Hawthorne effect when there is clear accountability, folks are more likely to perform better. All right, the second approach over here is around measuring OEE. The status quo for most plants is to measure how many good and bad parts are made each shift and to report that. While that obviously is critical to any kind of financial and ERP-based reporting, it has secondary consequences. For example, really low uptime on equipment and also low performance in terms of cycle time. So you really want to get a holistic view around your OEE, since it accounts for not only your quality, which is obviously in a way the number one thing you should be looking at, but also the other levers in your productivity. And the other thing is around, especially when it comes to tracking downtime and performance, manually reporting this can have an error up to 15%. So depending on your process and what your hypothesis is for the bottlenecks, you might want to consider investing in some kind of automation in this. And moving on from here is around continuous improvement. So while meeting your daily targets and measuring OEE, obviously are great feedback loops to your process. investing in continuous improvement over the long term is a great step. So at Amper, we have a ton of content around the A3 process, and everyone who had registered for this webinar will get a copy of it, but essentially it's following a scientific process of doing a 5 why analysis around what's really driving your issues, prioritizing the top issues, comparing what are the best approaches to solving them, and finally justifying it by quantifying the opportunity cost of these problems. So a lot of words, but the idea is to really measure and focus on solving the root causes. So those are some of the practical tips. I do want to take just a couple of minutes to share what we do at Amper. So our mission is to help manufacturers take their operations to the next level. And what we've done is build a really simple machine monitoring and OEE tracking tool. We're fortunate to be working with companies right from Fortune 500s like Dover, as well as job shops all over the US. And our mission is to help you essentially block and tackle your operations by helping you measure the 80-20 of information that you can use every day. And ultimately, the outcome that we desire is to help you increase your uptime and productivity, help you identify cost saving and improvement projects, and also automate the data collection process. And there are several reasons why OEE systems fail that we're looking to solve. The first one is having limited IT resources. As we know, there's a huge skills gap in the manufacturing industry, and having a controls engineer on staff is not very common for most manufacturers. So trying to solve that issue. Second is machine integration. Manufacturing has all kinds of machines that can range from brand new to much older, or even different types of equipment. And unclear use of data, which is how can you really make it practical to use on a day-to-day basis. And finally, just cost-wise, making it more accessible. So that's most of the content that we have prepared. Happy to take on any questions. But yeah, thanks for time, everyone. Hope this is interesting.
Yeah, we did have a question come in, which was, will you get a copy of the slides? And yes, everyone on here will be getting a copy of the recording, the slides, and that A3 template that Akshat had talked about, where we actually have one of our customer success managers who's a Six Sigma black belt walk you through that template and how you can use it. So hopefully it'll be super helpful for everyone on the line. And I think that was really the only question we had come through. I know we flew through that content. So if there are any questions, please reach out to me. You all have my email, and we can give everyone a few minutes back in their day.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.